All right, good morning, everyone. For those of you who are just joining us, my name's Don Webster, and I'm the Executive Director of TechBridge. We've got a great in-person audience today. We have a great virtual audience today, and it is my honor to introduce Father Tom Looney, who is the President of King's College, to do the welcoming remarks and to introduce our opening keynote. Father Tom.
On behalf of the entire King's College community, I'm thrilled to welcome you here in person and those who are with us virtually today as we gather for this Entrepreneurial Institute conference. It's great to be together. It's great to be in person. It's great to be technologically brought together as well. King's is pleased to continue to partner with TechBridge and the McGowan Foundation. Back in 2017, the first high school entrepreneurship program was held here at King's College, and there were 300 participants that day. Today, 5 years later, there are over 300 students and entrepreneurs gathering together in person and virtually. You come from 13 different high schools, from 10 different colleges and universities, and from 7 counties in Pennsylvania. What an amazing level of growth that this program has shown. King's College branded itself at its very beginning. Our first college president, James Connerton, said this: King's teaches its students not only how to make a living, but how to live. King's was founded as an entrepreneurial enterprise. To do what? To educate the sons of coal miners who didn't have the opportunity to have a higher education. And so King's was founded in an entrepreneurial spirit. And what's better definition for a person who's not an academic entrepreneurial person like myself, how to make a living and how to live. Putting those two things together. That reality of about bringing people together in community, to using one's skills and talents, as our mission statement says, to serve the common good, to help make the world a better place for everyone in it. So we're so thrilled to have this conference here today. I'm grateful to the King's College staff, to the speakers who will gather here, the chaperones from different institutions that make this day possible. Those of you who are here in person, an example of our entrepreneurial spirit here at King's, on the first floor of this building in our Wyndham Gallery, we have an entrepreneurial reality. Many people here at King's have gotten together to think about how do we make the world a better place? How do we work together with local community partners, Roots that seeks to help people who are struggling with substance abuse issues, with homelessness issues, and others in our community. Our engineering students, healthcare students, graduate students have put together a wonderful display of an entrepreneurial spirit seeking to do what? To make the world a better place by reaching out to those in need. So if you're here today, please stop down there and see what our students have put together. While you're here today, of course, the great thing is for students to ask a lot of questions, right? You're here to learn. How do you learn best? You learn by engaging other people, to probe the minds and the hearts of people who have dedicated their lives to growing in wisdom and knowledge. So take advantage of this opportunity while you're here. Please don't be shy. Ask all kinds of questions. Make sure you get the best opportunity for yourself here. And so we have today a wonderful speaker that I have the privilege of introducing you to today. Dr. Stephanie Gresh is the Associate Teaching Professor at Penn State University World Campus and the Wilkes-Barre campus. Her experience spans across several change-based organizations and within the higher education industry. She has been recognized for working with organizations to help restructure their business processes. She has worked as an implementation consultant and trainer, assisting NGOs and nonprofit organizations. Stephanie's current research emphasis is concerned with relational dynamics during and following significant change. She has presented at the International Leadership Association in Prague, Los Angeles, West Palm Beach, and Montreal. She has several published articles and book chapters and is a contributing editor in the followership research community. Stephanie served as a co-chair of the 2019 Global Followership Conference and is a contributing editor in her field. Stephanie also has over 10 years of experience teaching at the undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral levels within higher education in management, marketing, finance, entrepreneurship, behavioral science, and leadership. In addition, she serves as a dissertation committee chair and contributing member on several dissertation committees in her research field. Isn't that a phenomenal, phenomenal resume? And so please join me in welcoming Stephanie here as she presents her wonderful presentation this morning. Stephanie, welcome among us.
Good morning. How is everyone today? Oh, we can do better than that. Good morning. Good morning. All right, that's much better. Well, welcome. This is very exciting. So those that know me, and I know several of you are in the audience today, know that I am not the one that's going to be up here speaking to you the entire time. In fact, I'm going to be involving you, because what I'm going to be talking about today is emotional intelligence. And as we're going to learn about emotional intelligence, you're going to realize very quickly that involves all of you and your involvement in that. A little bit about my background. I appreciate the bio there. Thing that I think will be of most interest to all of you today is I do focus a lot of my work in the entrepreneurship field. I am extremely excited to help students and community members to understand those skills that are necessary to make you effective entrepreneurs. And I'm going to talk about one of the most important skills I feel is necessary for successful entrepreneurs, and that's emotional intelligence. And I call it the secret sauce of entrepreneurship. I am currently with the Penn State Wilkes-Barre Launchbox, which is part of the Event Penn State Initiative, and you're all part of the Global Entrepreneurship Week this week. And this presentation, this conference, and a lot of other activities that have been happening across the Penn State and the Pennsylvania systems is part of that. I'm the coordinator for the Wilkes-Barre Launchbox, and I'm also an assistant teaching professor for both the World Campus at Penn State as well as Penn State Wilkes-Barre. My email is here, but you could also find me if you ever want to reach out for questions beyond this presentation directly on the Wilkes-Barre Penn State website. And I look forward to you following up with me, so I don't want this to be the end of our conversation today. All right, well, we're going to get started. So I know all of you have phones. Don't pretend you don't. So you're going to pull this out. I want you to scan this QR code, and hopefully no technology will impact this. We've tested it several times. It will take you to a site that's going to require you to answer one simple question. And that question is, for you to define for me, what is entrepreneurship? So I'm going to give everyone a few moments there. We have Kat who can come around and help other people if anyone has any challenges with this. So just raise your hand if you're having any issues. You will have to X out of a couple ads, as all these things love to do. So. So I have a little cheat sheet here that I'm seeing your responses, so. But I'm not going to tell you what that is. I know. And because we start on time and end on time, I'm going to give us just another minute here because I want to make sure I have plenty of time for questions at the end of my presentation. All right, well, that means that just too many of you overloaded Poll Everywhere, but that's okay, because that's what we have Kat who will come around and ask for you. So those that would like to contribute in addition to what we have on here, as well as our online audience, if you wouldn't mind going around, she's going to come around with the microphone. And I'd like you to share, just a couple, who would like to give me their definition that couldn't get in, because that just means we have too many people, which is great. That's a great problem to have.
Okay, so my response was creatively finding ways to add value to people's lives.
Okay. We have time for a couple others. Anyone else? Your time.
Creating and like running a business, but also like taking like a risk starting it.
Okay. That's good. All right, time for one more. Yes.
Employing innovation to advance society.
Okay. Excellent. These were all great answers, and actually you're going to see them throughout my presentation, which I think is very neat. Here's the formal definition in the dictionary. I will tell you that I did a quick Google search for entrepreneurship and what it is. I must have found over 100 answers. It's the same thing when everyone asks, how do you define leadership? Right? So it's one of those things that there are many definitions. So the formal definition in the dictionary, right or wrong, I'm going to make an argument that it leaves out a lot. And I heard this in one of our presenters right here, is an activity of setting up a business, taking on risk, I heard risk, that's going to be an important part of our conversation today, with the hope of profit. So I think that's important to understand, but I think there's something a little bit more. And I like to call it entrepreneurship realized. So validated creative solutions, I heard creative, and I saw this as well in the poll. I also saw to resolve societal problems, that just came up. Technological problems for consumers. Or as our first presenters did so nicely today, customers, consumers. It's about that experience. So then you're all left with the question of, well, how? How is entrepreneurship realized? How do we find those creative solutions to solve problems for consumers, which all of you are? So that brings us to the fun part of this. And that is my daughter. As you can see, she's on here, and she's going to be part of this story. So my background is a lot in behavioral science. I do a lot with studying how emotion and how we think and how we process emotion. In our opening presentation today, they spoke a lot about emotion, emotion driving the consumer experience, emotion driving brands, the tone. So what I'm going to tell you is, yes, that is correct. But how many of you, and just a raise of hands, know why that happens in our minds? Why does that happen? Why do we feel that way when we see those brands, when we see those experiences, when we get a like on social media? How many people know? A couple, okay. And that's usually what I get, and that's why I'm here. So our brain is very sophisticated. 95% of everything that we take in is based on emotion. 95%. And that is subconscious emotion. So that means you don't even think about it before you do something. That's amazing. And you may say, but that's also scary. But it's there for a reason. We're going to see a little bit later in this presentation why. So when we first take in information, we have to react to that. And that is what we call the part of our brain, and I'm not going to get into the science of this today. Any of you that may study this down the road will. What we call the limbic, the emotional part of our brain that reacts immediately to what we're seeing, to who we're with, to our reactions. And that's extremely important to know. Emotions are the driving force behind the decision-making process. So we know automatically, by you all being here, that 95% of everything we do comes from emotion. You're already well ahead of most other students that are in your same, whether in different states or different places, right? Because now you know, you're aware. So that's automatically going to make you think twice before you react emotionally. And that's what I want to help you with today. So I have my daughter up here. Her name is Brianna. She is going to be 4 the end of next month. And I put this picture up there because this is a farm we visited recently. She's very into animals. And in order to get that goat, she actually ran around the farm, grabbed the goat up into her lap, and held it. Right? Very, very common thing that toddlers do. Any of them, I'm sure you've all had either siblings or know people, or maybe you have babysat toddlers. They're very emotionally driven. They immediately react to things that they see in their environment. I would argue that if you were in this same circumstance, you may not have just immediately grabbed the goat. You may be thinking things like, well, maybe that goat's going to bite me. Maybe that goat doesn't want to be held. Maybe that's not nice for me to grab it up and put it into my lap, right? That process is separating emotion, the want to have the goat, from the actual decision-making process. And that is what makes us unique as human beings. It's the one thing you walk away with today, is we have the ability to separate our emotions from logic. And I'm sure many of you have heard the expression, emotions trump logic. And that simply means that if we let emotions drive us, we have a harder time getting to the decision-making part, the logic part. But the good news I'm going to share with you today is there is a technique, a tool that has been established out there as a way for us to space out the distance between our initial reaction emotionally to things and our decision-making process. And that is called emotional intelligence, which is also referred to a lot of times shorthand for EI. How many of you, again, a raise of hands, have heard of the term emotional intelligence? Oh, wow, this is excellent news. Again, most of the times when I do these types of presentations, maybe half the room knows that term. So we're going to look into this a little bit more. So emotional intelligence was a term that was established by these two researchers. I'm sure you will see it today and never remember it again in the future. But what's important is what they deciphered in this definition. Emotional intelligence is your ability to recognize and understand emotions in both yourself and in others. It's your ability to use this awareness, and that's the key word today, awareness, to manage your own behaviors and how your behaviors impact relationships. Very complex, but very powerful. Simplified, it's your ability to know what your emotions are, being able to deal with them before making fast decisions, right? Spacing the distance between emotion and logic. What we can do and no other animal can do. So let's take a look a little more. Let's decipher this down and really dig down a little bit more. So this is the emotional intelligence model. How many people have seen this? Only one, maybe two. Okay. So this is how you do it. So I'm going to break this down for you. And I'm hoping that when you come away from today's presentation, this is something you continue to work on. First, we have what we call the personal level. That's yourself. Self-awareness. I'm sure all of you know what self-awareness is. It's being aware of how we are dealing with our environment. How are we dealing with the emotions that we're facing today? Many of you may have come in the room today and have had a bad night, a bad morning, are tired, right? All those things play a part. By being aware of it and refocusing yourself here, you're being self-aware. The other personal area we call self-management. That takes it a step further. It says not only do I have to be self-aware of what is going on with me, I need to know how my behaviors are also managed, right? So I react to my emotions in behaviors, right? Those are the outcomes of emotion called self-management. So I need to know what behaviors do I normally do. So if I know I'm getting into a circumstance, I need to know how my behaviors are also managed, right? So I react to my emotions in behaviors, right? Those are the outcomes of emotion or behaviors. So I need to know what behaviors do I normally do. So if I know I'm getting into a circumstance where I'm going to be presented with that emotion, but I understand this, I'm going to look at emotions in a little bit here. I know how to manage that. You can't possibly understand that part. So the next thing has to do with how we understand others, right? So now we understand ourselves. You have to do that first. Always do that first. Because if you can't understand yourself and your awareness of yourself and your awareness of behaviors of yourself, you can't possibly understand others. So the next level is social awareness. And that social awareness has to do with your ability to understand those that are sitting around you. What are they coming to the table with today? Did they have a bad night last night? Do they have things going on in their own personal lives that maybe you don't know about, but you can kind of sense in how they're reacting to you? It's about taking that extra time to be aware of those around you. Branding, which we learned about in the earlier presentation, does this all the time. They are constantly developing algorithms behind the scene to figure this out, to know when you're happy, when you're sad. How do they do that? Well, they pick up on different comments you've put in social media. They pick up on different videos that you've placed out on TikTok, whatever it may be. They are light years ahead of where we are today here in this place. They can sense based upon movements and patterns how that happens. So you need to be aware of that too. And then finally, relationship management. Not only knowing how others feel, but knowing how to work with them, right? So if I'm working with a challenging person, instead of running away, and we'll see that in one of the emotions we're going to look at in a minute, I embrace that person. I figure out, what can I do, though we may never agree, how do I better manage this relationship? So not the easiest thing to do. And I would argue, for myself, this is something I've been working on and will work on the rest of my life. And all of you will too. Emotional intelligence takes a very long time, but it is a skill we can learn. But it takes and requires active practice. The one thing I will tell you is that those that have been found to have high emotional intelligence are 90% more effective as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as business, as managers. 90%, that is a very large number. And again, 4 things to continually work on. I have up here, and again, there are many examples of this that are out there. There are many tools that have been created to assess where you are with emotional intelligence. This is one example. And again, you can reach out to me for other examples if you want to know where to find some of these assessments. This is a free one that I found on mindtools.com. Again, I'm sure many of you in your classrooms have gone to MindTools for other things. But it's a simple survey assessment that you can take to help you to understand where your baseline is for emotional intelligence. We're not going to take the time in the presentation today, but I encourage each of you to find this or another type of emotional intelligence assessment to see where you are. You'll determine that the higher the score level that comes out based upon your responses to these questions, the higher the level of emotional intelligence you have. And what this will tell you, if you're honest with yourself, as with any assessment, if you are not honest, your results are not going to be correct, right? So you want to be honest with yourself when you go in to take this. And you want to put yourself in a circumstance to which you are addressing emotion, right? So when I take this, I think, oh, well, maybe this is in a conflict. I'm in a meeting with conflict, and then I'm going to answer the questions thinking that in mind, right? So again, tools that are out there. There's a lot of great free courses that are out there, Coursera, EDX, LinkedIn Learning, that are out there on emotional intelligence either. But if I can do one thing for you today and make you aware of this, you can take the next step. So let's dig a little bit deeper, and I'm going to get us into another activity here. I'm going to ask Kat's help here to do this. At the very base of understanding emotional intelligence, we have to first understand what drives motivations in us, right? So where do those emotions come out? And in the earlier presentation, they did a great job of explaining this to you, the needs that consumers want, or customers, which is all of you. In this, and I'm sure, how many people here are familiar with Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs? All right, so this should be relatively, usually this is something that is taught in high school, definitely in the college level. So this is Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. I mean, it's one of many that look at this, but I like it because it's simple and it makes sense. So basically what this argues is at the bottom of the pyramid, we have basic needs that have to be satisfied. At the top, these are the ones, once we meet those basic needs, that we can then go on to achieve and add and help others. I like to look at this hierarchy in terms of emotional intelligence. At the bottom tends to be, when you're going through those circumstances, lower emotional intelligence. At the top, when you get to self-actualization, which means the ability to actually contribute and contribute your skills and knowledge in a way that's of value to others, those are high emotional intelligence, people with high emotional intelligence. So I have 5 organizations here. I want you to line the organizations with the greatest need that they are fulfilling. So physiological are your basic food, water needs. Safety, housing, feeling safe, secure. Belonging, that's relationships, being along and feeling you're comfortable and not feeling isolated. Esteem, that's your ability where you feel strong in yourself and you're able to be more impactful with others. And then of course self-actualization is like the top of the pyramid. It's really those top leaders that really feel confident in themselves and are able to make those contributions. So let's start first with ring. Everyone knows what ring is? Okay. So we're going to come around. Somebody want to volunteer. Where do you think in the pyramid ring falls?
Safety.
You got it. Yes, safety, right? It lets us see a video representation of people coming to our door. Again, excellent. How about we go to TikTok next? Oh my God, here.
Need my workout, guys.
Is it esteem?
It could be, but there's one I'm going to argue is a little better than that. Who wants to take again? Next guess.
Belonging?
It is belonging, yes. For most of us, and again, it depends on how you use it, right? So some of these go over many of them, so I'm not going to say that any of these are wrong answers. How about LinkedIn? How many people know what LinkedIn is at first? I know this is something we start to learn more on the university level. Okay, good. So where do you think LinkedIn belongs?
Esteem?
It is esteem, yeah. So then obviously by process elimination, and I did this intentionally because self-actualization is the hardest one to always pinpoint, would be TED Talks. Are we familiar with TED Talks? Right, so it's somebody that's very confident in their expertise and they're very confident in what they do and polished, right? So that would be somebody that's more self-actualized. Excellent. So you can see that every one of these organizations, just like every brand that you heard earlier in the earlier presentation, are linked directly to a need that motivates individuals to purchase these, to watch this, to go on and use LinkedIn, right? No matter what you do in these organizations, you're fulfilling those needs. And then, of course, the emotions being the most powerful on the bottom. Because I don't know about you, but if I haven't eaten breakfast or I didn't eat dinner and somebody asks me to do something, I'm not in a good mood, right? If I'm tired, I'm not in a good mood. If I'm like, don't have an umbrella and out in the rain and I'm being asked to do something, I'm not too happy, right? So those emotions are very powerful on those lower pieces. So let's look a little bit more into emotions. Being mindful of our time here. Another thing, and I'm just going to ask for a raise of hands on this. These are the universal emotions, meaning that no matter what country you're from and what language you speak, these are the emotions that we are familiar with. They include being happy, sad, angry, surprised, scared or fearful, and disgusted or turned off, right? So you may know them from other terms. Which of these do you think are the most powerful emotion? So I'm going to go for each one. You're just going to give me a raise of hand when I go through each one. How many think it's happy? Couple. Sad. Couple. Angry. Oh, wow. That's a new one. I think you're all too much on social media. I don't know. Surprised. Anyone for surprised? No? How about scared or fearful? Okay, quite a bit there too. How about disgusted? Any for disgusted? Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you that the right answer is fear, scared. All the others fall under that one. So hopefully it makes sense. But angry would be closely linked to this, right? So why is that the case? So they talked a little bit about it earlier in the branding, and again, they did the job for me earlier, so this is great. So they talked about it when they talked about branding and consistency. So our brain likes certain things. It likes to feel safe. It likes to feel secure. It likes to feel as though things are not changing. Status quo is more comfortable than not the status quo. Consistency is predictable. That's why brands go for your consistency. They want to know you're always going to come back for that Coke. You're not going to challenge yourself because that would require you to step outside your status quo and do something different, and we don't like to do that. And that's not a bad thing. I put a picture of a bear up here because that's the reason why that happens. We have to know we can do things, and we have to build those, confidence in those things over time. The bottom piece here I have is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and these are the basic reactions that we take to fear. So fighting would be for you to fight back. In the case of a bear, probably not the greatest idea. Flight would mean you run away. That's most likely what people would do in that circumstance. Freeze would mean you'd stand still. Fawn would mean you try to appease the bear. I don't want to be bothered with this. I just want everyone to be happy with me. I'm a go along, get along kind of person. I'm going to do that. Right? Those are the 4 reactions we do to fear always. If I know fear is the #1 driving force behind all behavior, and I know those are the 4 things we do, that really helps me to understand emotion a lot better. By knowing that it's not a bad thing that I want the status quo, by knowing that that's not a negative thing, by knowing that consistency is predictable, by knowing that I want to pursue safety, I want to be valued, and I want to feel like we belong. Those are the top 3 things that all human beings want at all times. To be safe, valued, and belong. That's how we survive. If we didn't have those things, you wouldn't be sitting here today. You wouldn't have been born. So that's all important to know and be aware of. So then we can take it to a step further and say, well, how do we develop emotional intelligence then, if we're naturally going to be afraid of facing emotions? Now, a bear obviously is an extreme example. You can use many others here. Our brain reacts the same way to how a bear comes at us as if we were to get a negative post on social media, as if we were to be cut in line, say at an amusement park, right? So our brain reacts the same way. Maybe how we address it and based upon our experiences and how we're aware is where that space comes in that I always talk about. So if over time I constantly give in to fighting with somebody, then that's always going to be the pattern that I do, because I've developed that as a consistent pattern. However, if I make a change to that and I go away from my fixed mindset, which what I've done all my life, and I say, I'm going to change, it requires me to be uncomfortable, and I'm not going to feel good doing this, and it's going to be scary, and I'm going to have fear as my number one thing. But by doing that and doing it more often and more often, I'm developing emotional intelligence. So what I'm telling you here is there's a lot of work to be emotionally intelligent, but it is a key thing to be aware of. And it is a number 1 skill set. Again, remember the 90%. 90% for all effective entrepreneurs have high emotional intelligence. That's not all they have. That's what I'm focused on today here. But that's the key. So I'm going to come in here and conclude with the consumer experience. I'm going to bring it back around to entrepreneurship. So what have we done so far? Well, we've looked at emotional intelligence as the secret sauce. We've acknowledged that it's not the easiest thing to do, but it's something that's very powerful and will really get us far if we do. So how does this relate to entrepreneurship? Well, the consumer experience. The consumer experience is all of you. It's what we learned about in the branding. It's the laboratory, the experimentation that happens when problem-solving approaches are tested. Entrepreneurs fail fast. They understand pain points. They recognize them and they embrace them. Doesn't mean they feel comfortable, doesn't mean they don't have a lot of bad days, but all that goes into them getting a win on the other end. Not an easy process. Even if we look at the branding, I'm sure Kat would tell you that they probably redo their branding templates thousands of times because you have to get it right. It doesn't mean that you're going to go with, because I like this and I feel comfortable with this. This is what I've always done. This is what I'm going to do. No. So we're going to look at an example of that. Uber. Everyone here knows Uber? Probably use it a lot. Uber, Lyft, rideshare, that whole market that's out there now. So Uber, in its very beginning, wasn't successful because there was a key fear that was driving issues, and that was stranger danger. I call it stranger danger. You didn't want to get in a car with a stranger. You were afraid. What if they were going to drive me off to an abyss somewhere and just drop me, right? That, even though it doesn't sound logical to us today, it was a real thing that had to be overcome. So what did they do? They work, and they continue to work today, even in more recent years, by putting up the sign so you can see a car come up and it's bright and brightly lit. That's an attempt to bring down that fear. So they failed many times and reiterated and figured out pain points because they knew this was going to be a success. Doesn't mean it was easy for them. They certainly didn't have a fixed mindset doing that, and they constantly iterated. So what does this mean? Well, it means creativity and experimentation are at the core of all problem solving as entrepreneurs. It means that failure shouldn't stifle creativity. People with a growth mindset are encouraged by this and come up with multiple different various steps to a solution. It encourages you to struggle, to work through those struggles to come out on the other end. So here's the final model I'm going to present to you today. I was tasked, so Don tasked me with coming to a presentation to you to come up with the key intersection of what emotional intelligence and entrepreneurship. And this is what I want you to walk away with. Consumer awareness and entrepreneurship realized. These are the two outcomes. To know your consumer, understand their needs, to know what you're trying to solve. The middle ground is what we're talking about here. At the intersection of emotion and entrepreneurship lies consumer needs, which drive motivation, drive action. After all, the consumer experience is the laboratory where problem-solving approaches are tested. Powerful, right? Entrepreneurship realized. Validated creative solutions, that definition you all helped me come up with, which resolve societal, business, or technological problems for consumers. All right, I have one more activity and then I'm going to take questions. I'm going to turn it over here because I know we are having some technical problems with this video. So I'm going to show you a video here of a very well-known influencer. Most of you will know this individual. Your job. Sorry. That's okay. Your job is to answer one question for me. And that question is, what problem is he solving? What problem, right, the core of everything we looked at today, what problem is he solving? All right, so there are tons of videos that he does. Everyone familiar with who that is? Yeah. Very popular influence. I think he's #1 now on TikTok or close to. So we're going to come around with the microphone. This is your last big opportunity to tell me, what is he doing? How is he solving problems? What is the problem he's solving? What is he doing? You learned everything about emotion here and entrepreneurship realized.
He's exposing stupid internet trends.
Why does that drive you? Why are you so engaged to this?
Because it shows, like, I guess how dumb they are.
Emotion, right?
Sure.
Yes. How about other thoughts?
I think people just have way too much time on their hands. Like, if they're watching that, like, apologies if you do, but, like, I think that's the problem he's solving, boredom, and maybe it gives people some sort of, like, satisfaction to see, like, an easier solution or something like that. That's all I can come up with.
Yeah? How about some other thoughts?
Like, honesty, I guess. Like, he's like, it's not that difficult, and he adds a comedic aspect to relate to you.
Yeah, he provides a tone, right? This goes back, he's a brand. If you go back to that first presentation, how about some other thoughts?
I thought of simplicity.
Yeah, very good. Consistency, predictability. Yeah, anything, it's all in my presentation here, so I'm really looking to see if you paid attention. A couple more we have time for, I think. Yep.
They're all making it complicated, and he's making it easier to do.
Very good, yes. It is simplicity, predictability. All right, yep, time for one more here.
He's basically doing what we're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. All of you are right. There is no wrong answer here. The key is he provides a consumer experience. He's entrepreneurship realized, right? He does everything that's here. He found the intersection of emotion and entrepreneurship. The needs that we have, maybe it's just for something funny to watch. Maybe it's for just some comedic relief or something to take us away from where we are. That drives motivation, right? You're watching it, you're sharing it. He wouldn't have gotten to where he is if you didn't all share it. Again, after all this, he was playing around in his laboratory. Some of his earlier videos are not as polished if you look at some of his more recent videos, right? He's testing that to see if it works. Again, and he's solving for, at the time, a pandemic issue where everyone was stuck at home, right? So he was solving for a problem there. And that's what really brought him on the map. And that's what influencers do. They figure out who their consumer needs are and they problem solve. Again, one of many examples I can give you here today. All right, so I'm gonna go to the last slide I have here, and then I've made time for questions for everyone, if I can get there. There it is. So I'm gonna bring us back to here, because this is what I want you to walk away with, right? If you can walk away with anything, is to understand that emotion plays a critical role, a 95% role in decisions that are made by consumers. Those needs that drive motivation. It's not about you, it's about the consumer. If you as an entrepreneur come into something and want to solve for a problem, the key piece is to develop emotional intelligence to be able to solve for that problem. And to be able to test and allow yourself to develop a growth mindset and move out of that uncomfortable area of the status quo into something new. And that takes work, and it doesn't happen overnight. So with that, questions? And look, I made 3 minutes. Yes.
Yeah, we have some time.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Hold on. We need to get you on the mic for the people that are virtual.
So, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you told me this was really hard for you. How come? What's the one thing that you want these students to know from your presentation? You told me it was hard, now you just killed it. So, what's the one thing you want them to know from this presentation that they take home?
Well, I'm an introvert by nature. Presentations are nothing that was easy for me. I practice this a lot. I do this a lot. It has become comfortable. So I've established a growth mindset. I didn't stay in my own fixed mindset. If I had, I'd still be working in finance behind a computer screen and not here today with you. So that could be one big takeaway of my own personal experience. Anyone can do this. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do these things, right? It may not be comfortable for you. It may not be easy, but the good things are never easy, right? And I'm very passionate about this. I love to educate. So it's not just about forcing myself to do something like this. I really enjoy this. So, yeah. Thanks.
Hey, Stephanie, thank you. Great job. Hey, one more of a comment on your fear slide.
Yeah.
With the bear
Yeah.
there. One perhaps word of caution for our audience, and I've become a little bit more accustomed to this now driving up and down Route 115 on the way back to Interstate 80. One thing you have to keep in mind with fear, and especially with bears, and this comes from the one of my favorite radio shows, The Catholic Guy, bears are fast. So be ready.
Yeah, it's so true.
All right, we have time for one more question. Oh. Yes.
And I have to say, I've never seen a bear, so I'm hoping that stays the same.
So you're talking about like creating that like emotional connection with your like audience or like consumer base. When you're first starting out, how do you like find out what kind of consumer base you have in order to like give that emotional connection? Like how do you first establish like what they need?
Yep, so I would always argue that you don't go to the customer first, you first figure out a problem that you think has to be solved. Once you establish what that problem is, then you figure out who it is that you're solving it for. And then you can go out and figure out who that customer is. If we go back to the earlier presentation, that's about when they had those little people. We call that
personas.
Personas, right? So then you establish who the personas are for each of those individuals based upon what you're trying to solve. For Uber, for example, Uber initially was to establish in the cities, right? So the initial persona of Uber was to solve issues of those that didn't have automobiles. Obviously, that's changed a lot. Now they have more personas. So again, you were solving for a problem of not having access always to a taxi or not wanting to do that, trying to solve that problem first. Hopefully that helps. Yeah.
Dr. Stephanie Gresh. Okay, for those of you who are in person, intentional networking is going to be in this room. Next door is going to be esports, and 2 down